He is the greatest action hero in mythology. His name is Hercules, a man tormented by a horrifying sin, driven to take on 12 impossible challenges in a quest for redemption. To us, it is myth, but to the ancients, it was reality. A legend based on an actual warrior, filled with hidden codes about the real world. This is the truth behind the myth of Hercules. In a strange and unfamiliar world, something stirs just below the waterline. It breaks the surface. A giant serpent with not one, but 9 dragon-like heads. It spews poisonous vapors and then eats its victims alive. But today, the monster has met its match. The strongest hero who ever lived. Mythology's ideal man. Hercules. He is the most popular hero in history. A half-god, half-mortal, with superhuman strength, who is destined to rid the Greek world of evil. But that's only the beginning of his story.
Hercules was something special and at the same time extremely ordinary. He was a man of the people. He was a little bit like Babe Ruth in American mythology. He was a womanizer, he was a heavy drinker, and he was an extraordinary athlete. He was a little bit like a god, but he was very definitely a human being.
Today, a lot of people think heroes have superhuman strength. They get the girl, they have superhuman powers, can fly through the air. It's a different conception in the Greek world. A hero is someone who has superhuman strength, but someone that has to suffer. And Hercules is the consummate hero in Greek society. He's destined to suffer more than anyone else.
In his myth, Hercules confronts a legion of terrifying enemies and endures suffering on a scale no human has ever known. His story begins with Zeus, the sex-crazed king of the gods, having an illicit affair.
Hercules is the son of Zeus and a mortal woman named Alcmene.
Classical mythology is loaded with stories of gods who impregnate mortal women and give birth to gods or demigods.
So this demigod idea means that this person has some features that are very godly, some divine powers, but at the same time he is mortal, he can die. I suspect that the Greeks invented this idea because they wanted to reach the gods as much as possible, to create images of themselves that are closer and closer to the gods.
Hercules would grow up to be Greece's model hero. But he has one powerful enemy who wants to see him destroyed. Zeus's wife, the goddess Hera.
She's the queen of the goddesses, and she has wonderful beauty, she's supremely intelligent, she's mighty, but she's also exceedingly jealous because Zeus is always running after other women.
Zeus fathers countless children with a variety of mortal women. And Hera hates them all. But she decides it is Hercules who must pay the ultimate price for the sins committed by Zeus.
Hera's hatred of Hercules is actually very, very irrational. It's almost as if she knew that he was going to challenge her favor in heaven in some way. She knew there was something about Hercules that was different than the other children, and maybe she felt threatened by this. But every day of his life, he seemed to have been paying for this hatred of hers.
One night, while Hercules is still a baby, Hera sends 2 poisonous snakes into his nursery.
He's got one snake in each hand, and he's squeezing them to death. Little tiny infant squeezing to death these two giant serpents. Everyone knew at that point that there was something a little bit different about Hercules.
This is one of the reasons why Hera will hate him, because she cannot kill him. She can make his life wretched, but she cannot kill him, because destiny says he will become immortal. And even a god has to obey destiny.
But Hera is just getting started. Her vendetta against Hercules will determine the course of his life, from the cradle to the grave. So goes the myth. But what is the link to reality? February 2004. In a Greek town called Thebes, archaeologists discover stunning evidence that sheds new light on the story of Hercules' birth. They uncover a buried temple beneath an ordinary residential lot. In its center are the remains of an altar. Around the altar are hundreds of ceramic vases and small statues. They all portray one thing: Hercules. After the discovery, researchers linked the findings to a 2,500-year-old text that describes a mysterious house of Hercules at Thebes, just outside the gates of the ancient city. The description and the site match perfectly. But there's more. The ancient text says that this shrine was erected on the precise spot of Hercules' birth. Could the hero have been real? The hunt for clues leads back to the myth. As the story continues, Hercules comes of age, a man-god straddling two worlds, the human and the supernatural.
He is too strong to be a human. He's sort of like a god trapped in a human's body. Often, he accidentally does bad things to people around him, like he accidentally kills people, he accidentally damages property. He can't really control himself.
This superhuman strength makes it impossible for Hercules to blend into Greek society.
He was unable to form emotional contacts with anyone. In fact, there seems to have been a kind of schizophrenic quality to his makeup. He was half human and half divine, and yet he had a father who would not protect him from the terrible trials and tribulations that Hera inflicted upon him. He was left alone, suspended between heaven and earth, and having nowhere to go.
Desperate for some semblance of normalcy, Hercules marries a beautiful princess who bears him 2 sons. But his domestic bliss is short-lived. His nemesis Hera soon returns, determined to make sure he never knows happiness. This time she'll transform him from family man to murderer by driving him mad.
She sends madness to him as he sleeps, and he, in his madness, believes that his wife and his children are his enemies.
In the dead of night, Hercules commits an unspeakable horror.
When Hercules wakes up from this madness, from this ravenous madness, he finds himself covered in the blood of his own family.
He doesn't really even know that he's the one that did it. But nevertheless, he has the blood stains on him. It is the physical mark of guilt. And this is the guilt he must bear. And it's from this horrible incident that the rest of Hercules' story unfolds.
The strongest man on earth has slaughtered his entire family. When his blind rage subsides, it is replaced with intense remorse. a horrible anguish that will plague him forever. The ancient Greeks called this a blood guilt.
In antiquity, a blood guilt was understood to be a kind of curse that clung to you from the blood of the person whose murder you were involved in.
This is a little bit like a kind of Christian penance, where you do certain good acts on the earth in order to make up for bad things that you might have done.
From here on, he's going to have to try to get rid of this stain of blood guilt from this horrible act. This is the very pivot of Hercules' whole life.